In July of 2019, Kevin Feige officially announced that a Fantastic Four project was in the works. Fans understandably went wild.
Family. Fantastic. We're working on a feature now.
It was finally happening. Dreams were unironically coming true. After years of Marvel's first family being literally pushed aside, not just out of movies, but comics, games, animations, just pushed out of the Marvel universe as a whole. Then all of a sudden, here we were. Kevin Feige, who became the Fantastic Four savior in this moment, was finally bringing these beloved characters to the big screen. Well, again, and hopefully for real this time. We hadn't heard when the film would release, but surely it couldn't be too long, right?
5 years later.
Right now, it really feels like we're living through the renaissance of the Fantastic Four. The newest season of Marvel Rivals is all about them, and it's given more eyes to the team than they've had in the past 2 decades. In addition to that, Fantastic Four First Steps is only a few months away, and the movie is building up a ton of hype already with no real trailer. Our only real looks at the film are from leaked footage, and people are still really looking forward to this. I think it's important to remember just how barren it was for Fantastic Four fans around the time of this announcement. It's worse than being a fan of literally any DC character besides Batman, and that's really saying something. Anyway, Fantastic Four First Steps will truly be these characters' return to the world of film, and it's already confirmed they will be appearing in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, so they're going to be major players in this phase of the MCU. On Valentine's Day 2024, Marvel Studios did the unthinkable. They announced the cast for the movie. Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, and Eben Moss-Backrack as Ben Grimm. Pretty fantastic cast, if I do say so myself, but it took forever to get to that point. It felt like there was a new confirmed Fantastic Four casting every week. Looking back, it's such an interesting little era of MCU history now, and I kind of just want to do a bit of a deep dive on it, so take a seat, maybe get a little snack, and I truly hope you enjoy. This whole saga really begins back in February of 2021 with the first real bit of supposed casting. Of course, it's important to mention that up to this point, John Krasinski and Emily Blunt were already incredibly popular fan casts, but had not been credibly rumored or leaked up until this point. The best piece of evidence they had was that one comic panel where Reed does look suspiciously like Krasinski. Anyway, in February of 2021, a report came out from the Daily Telegraph that Jennifer Lawrence would be arriving to Australia to start filming the Fantastic Four. This one came as a huge shock, and Daniel RPK would also say he heard that she was in talks to play Sue Storm. Daniel RPK is a name you're going to be hearing a lot throughout this video. He was a pretty credible scooper. He still is, but around this time he was even more credible. Anyway, this Jennifer Lawrence casting was actually super controversial. Some people were fully on board, and some people really hated the idea. Some people hated it because of how she quote-unquote disrespected the character of Mystique, but I think the majority of people were just happy to get any sort of update on the Fantastic Four. Obviously, this one didn't end up being even a little true, but it really started an insane full 3 years of speculation, rumors, and leaks. I think the easiest way to move through this is to just go Fantastic Four member from Fantastic Four member. Since Sue kicked this off, let's just move along with her. Moving through this way also fits perfectly, as it was around this time that we got word that Sue Storm would be kind of the focal point of Fantastic Four, and the rest of the cast would be built around her, which explains why there is so many Sue Storm rumors compared to the rest of the cast. Emily Blunt's name was pretty consistently thrown around this entire time, especially after a certain somebody showed up in Multiverse of Madness. For a brief period there, it seemed like Blunt was almost guaranteed to be Sue Storm alongside her real-life husband, but of course that didn't end up happening. I'm gonna speed through a few here. The first couple really aren't that credible. They come from various sources, and it's not that no one believed them, it's just that there were some really solid casting rumors later on that had people convinced, whereas these come off more as fan casts in comparison. Dumoy, I think that's how you pronounce it. Dumoy is like this super weird pop culture leaking thing where people basically leak any celebrity info they have and they'll post it. I imagine there's some sort of background check in order to make sure this is like even a little bit credible, but I really don't know. Anyway, Dumoy reported that Alexandra Daddario would be joining the MCU as Sue Storm. This was almost immediately called out as Marvel planting fake leaks to find a mole, and I think that is probably the case here, or someone just lied. This never really came up again, and I think rightfully so. Most people really weren't fans of the casting, and I can't necessarily blame them. Grace Randolph, if you haven't heard of Grace Randolph, lucky you. She has the credibility of, I don't know, what's something with no credibility? Like an ant? I wouldn't trust an ant. Anyway, Grace Randolph reported that Allison Williams, who you may know from Get Out or Mithrigan, was in talks to star as Sue. Credit where credit's due, this one is kind of interesting. It's a casting that you wouldn't really immediately think of for the Invisible Woman, but once you hear it, it's kind of like yeah, why not? This never really materialized, and I don't remember ever hearing her name thrown out there again besides this one point in time, but hey, important to mention. Around this point, it felt like a lot of these rumors just became who's a blonde woman in Hollywood, and we'll just throw her into the rumor mill. Kristen Bell, very blonde actress, was seemingly hinted at by Daniel RPK and some other scoopers. This came after what I will refer to as the Mila Kunis saga. We will get to that later, but at one point during the saga, Mila Kunis revealed that she did in fact know who was in the Fantastic Four. This, alongside some cryptic tweets of Kristen Bell, was enough to get the rumors flowing, since Mila Kunis and Kristen Bell are friends, I guess. If it was just that, I'd ignore this part of the history entirely, but it was a little more credible. All of a sudden, you had a ton of different scoopers just posting like these weird cryptic gifs of Kristen Bell, and everyone started assuming that meant she was Sue. Now we kind of move on to the much more credible ones. Some of these had people acting like these actresses were confirmed for literal months, and I am definitely guilty of that. Asa Gonzalez, who you may know from Godzilla vs. Kong or Baby Driver, was rumored for a really hot second there. She was actually one of the first that seemed somewhat concrete. This came from My Time to Shine Hello, who was actually seen as a little bit credible back then. At this point in time, I would trust Grace Randolph or that not trustworthy aunt from earlier over her, but hey, she could have been bullshitting back then too, but this one was treated as pretty likely for a while there. Credit where credit's due, people were pretty on board with this one. I'm sure she would have been great. John Campea, you may know from this incredible moment.
Never thought I would say this in my entire online career, but look closely at Tobey Maguire's dick.
Revealed that he heard Jodie Comer was the top choice to play the Invisible Woman. That's right, a blonde woman in Hollywood. All honesty, she would have been fantastic, but I think she was a bit too young for what we now know the MCU is going for. We have finally made it to the final two. These were the biggest of them all, with Emma Stone actually being one of them. According to Jeff Snyder, who is another insider, Emma Stone was officially offered the role, but Marvel Studios wasn't willing to pay enough. Definitely not saying this was 100% true. I think if they truly wanted Emma Stone, they would have moved mountains to make it work. This had people going crazy. I think it's very fair to say Emma Stone is one of the best working actresses. The idea of having her as the Invisible Woman leading this next phase of the MCU was super exciting, but negotiations fell through. I gotta say, I do think this is for the best. I love Emma Stone, but I think she would have had to devote an enormous amount of time to the MCU, and I'd much rather see her work with Yorgos Lanthimos, other smaller films, and her incredible production work. I do remember around this time there were so many theories about how Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man would find the Invisible Woman, and there would be this new beef between Reed Richards and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. It was ridiculous, but that was what it was like to be a Marvel fan at this time. This is the big one. Drum roll, please. This was the Sue Storm casting for so long. We were fully convinced. Only a few months before the release of Barbie, Margot Robbie was officially offered the role of Sue Storm, according to Daniel RPK and eventually some others. Again, I feel like I should be saying this more throughout the video. When I say officially offered the role, we don't really have proof that actually happened. That's just what these insiders say. Just keep that in mind. What's really interesting here is that this is a whole different Fantastic Four. Margot Robbie was seemingly in negotiations with 3 other actors that have nothing to do with the current cast. In another world, we see this entirely different team, and it seems like they were offered the roles only a few months before our real Fantastic Four team. Again, grain of salt and so forth. You really shouldn't believe everything you read on the internet, but this was massive news at the time. Could not have been more on the nose earlier with famous blonde actresses. They were talking to the famous blonde actress. Surprisingly, people were pretty underwhelmed at the idea of this. While most people love Margot Robbie, the idea of her as Invisible Woman just didn't quite work for a lot of people. I think she probably would have been great, but I also think she's just too Margot Robbie, especially coming after Barbie. Not saying that Vanessa Kirby is some super niche D-list actress, but she is lesser known than Margot Robbie, at least to me, which I think I prefer. Anyway, this casting apparently fell through for the same reason as Emma Stone. Negotiations didn't work out because Disney wasn't willing to pay enough, which again, I just don't see. To be fair, this was before Barbie, but I still think if they really wanted Margot Robbie, they would just get Margot Robbie. They're Disney. Margot Robbie was really the last casting we had until Vanessa Kirby was eventually leaked alongside the real Fantastic Four cast, and then obviously confirmed on that fateful Valentine's Day. Fun fact, I had just gotten out of the movie theater after seeing Madam Web, took out my phone, saw the Fantastic Four cast was revealed, and was so excited, man. What a beautiful day. Anyway, all that leads up to the incredible Vanessa Kirby as Susan Storm officially. Next up, the brains of the Fantastic Four, Hal the brains of Marvel in general, Reed Richards, baby. Like I mentioned earlier, throughout all of this, John Krasinski was the guy, whether it was rumors or leaks or fan casts. Following Multiverse of Madness, for a few months there, it was just kind of accepted that Krasinski was going to be the 616 Reed. I mean, why get him to be Reed Richards if not? Most people just thought it made more sense to have him be Reed Richards for a couple minutes to tease the future than to just get him, kill him, and never see him again. As time went on, however, we didn't get any sort of official announcement, and that became less and less commonly accepted until eventually reports came out that he will not be 616 Reed, which does make sense. Reed Richards actually had a ton of fan casts. Who doesn't in the MCU at this point? But not all of these fan casts were ever really credibly rumored. Just to name a few of the really important ones: John David Washington, William Jackson Harper, Stephen Ewan, and my fan cast at the time, Penn Badgley, were all super popular. Funnily enough, Pedro Pascal's name was never really brought up at any point, which is weird considering it seemed like every single actor was thrown out there at some point. When he was first revealed, a lot of people were confused, but as time went on, I think a lot of people came to love it. I was a day one fan for the record. Anyways, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. One of the very first names brought up was actually Ryan Gosling. Yeah, this one really flew under the radar. I actually forgot about it until I started doing research for this video. Yeah, research. That makes it sound like I'm curing cancer or something. I'm literally Googling Reed Richards MCU. This is real research. Anyway, Ryan Gosling started being thrown around in real early 2023 from Jeff Snyder, who was actually fairly normal back then, but that's a whole other can of worms. This was also pre-Barbie, but it is really funny to imagine the world where we got Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie as Reed and Sue. Some reports would later come out saying Gosling was actually in talks for Dune, but it seemed like that never really went anywhere. And a lot of people actually wanted him as Silver Surfer too. I think he probably would have been a good Reed around this time, but post Barbie and The Fall Guy, all of a sudden I just can't see him being the most serious guy in the world anymore. Following Ryan Gosling was a fairly quiet casting. Again, this came from less than reliable sources, but hey, a deep dive is a deep dive, I guess. Matt Smith was ready to be Reed Richards for like a day or two. I mean, I honestly think he would have been incredible, and I remember being really excited when this report came out. He is a big actor, but not nearly to the same level of a Ryan Gosling or some of the other casts I'll talk about soon, but I really could just visualize him as Reed. Like I said, this report didn't really make a huge splash, and his name was really only out there for a couple days, but I think it's really fun to mention because I am curious about that world. Plus, Matt Smith has never been in a Marvel movie before. Nope. Never. I don't know why you think he was. Hey, what's that? No, don't put that up on the screen. No, stop. There were two more titans when it comes to Reed Richards casting. These two were both rumored alongside Margot Robbie at one point, so this is the alternate universe, big budget Fantastic Four family. It started with Adam Driver originally. A tweet from the now not reliable My Time to Shine Hello simply said, "It's done, period. Adam Driver is our Reed Richards, period." Yeah, I think you can figure out why they're not so credible now, but I think it is fairly safe to say Driver was in negotiations at one point and was possibly Marvel's top choice for a minute there. Adam Driver and Margot Robbie were consistently paired together, and I think a lot of people were really down for this. Adam Driver is such an interesting actor, and he would have brought a certain vibe and charm to Reed that not many other actors would. His performance on Girls rattling about comic books can easily be translated to Reed Richards babbling about some insane science to his not so interested family, in my head at least.
Since he made that deal with the devil.
I was such a huge Mary Jane fan. I don't know why they screwed that up.
I'm sticking to the X-books. At least when Cyclops psychically cheated with Emma Frost on Jean Grey, who we all know is the love of his life, at least there was a little build-up.
Not to mention, the dude is incredible. Like, the idea of an Adam Driver Fantastic Four kind of does bump the movie up from the average MCU movie. I think at this point, First Steps is already bumped up, but at this point, a lot of eyes started turning. What were they cooking? If Adam Driver is interested, surely it must be a special script. Obviously, this never materialized, but this was a very major turning point in this whole saga. Adam Driver was, by all accounts, confirmed to be Reed. There were thousands of videos about how this was confirmed. I even had people in my real life who aren't huge into, like, film or superheroes or anything ask me about it. That's how much this casting choice broke out. Adam Driver was kind of consistently the real Reed Richards cast up until Pedro Pascal's name started getting thrown around, but one other name kind of got mixed in there. For a while there, it seemed like no one was quite ready to say that Adam Driver officially passed on the role, but all of a sudden Jake Gyllenhaal's name was being thrown around alongside him. It was said Driver was like the top choice, but in the event he turns it down, Gyllenhaal was ready to go. This was met with a resounding huh? He was already in the MCU, not that that's ever really stopped them before, but even then, people were really confused. This is also a very important moment in this whole timeline. This is really when people started saying, oh my god, shut up. Fantastic Four casting leaks were no longer met with any enthusiasm, any sort of trust, just nothing. We had been through so much, people got excited and waited for an official announcement literally week after week, and then nothing. Especially coming off of Adam Driver literally being confirmed, and by literally, I mean, we all thought he was confirmed. He was definitely not literally confirmed, but post Adam Driver, everyone was just so over this. Anyway, I think Gyllenhaal probably would have been really good as Reed, and he's kind of in the same boat as Adam Driver, but not to the same extent where his involvement does kind of bump the project up a little bit. Anyway, Gyllenhaal was really the last major rumor before Pedro Pascal, and people were truly finally over these castings, and fully rightfully so. Before that fateful day in February, Pedro had actually been thrown around for a while. November of 2023, his name started popping up from insider Jeff Snyder to a report from Slash Film. It seemed pretty much confirmed. People didn't put too much stock into it because, again, we were just over it, but from this point on, it really did seem like Pedro was Reed, or at least was most likely to be Reed. In February of 2024, just a couple weeks before the cast would actually be announced, Pedro attended the SAG-AFTRA Foundation Conservation's Career Retrospective. My God, what a mouthful. In their description for the event of Pedro, they revealed he would begin production on Fantastic Four soon. Again, we were still pretty skeptical. The idea that the person writing the biography may have just read the same rumors as the rest of us wasn't that far-fetched. And then, boom, the next day, Matt Shakman did the unthinkable. February 8th of 2024, it seemed our long, hard battle was finally coming to an end. Matt Shakman, the director of the Fantastic Four, posted an Instagram story saying SAG-AFTRA confirmed Pedro Pascal will play Reed in Fantastic Four with a little fan-made edit. And then he immediately deleted it. I'm guessing he got a not at all scary phone call from Kevin Feige and decided to remove it on his own accord. I'm sure there wasn't a red dot on his forehead until he removed it or anything. We don't know for sure if Marvel always planned that lovely little Valentine's Day announcement, but I truly would not be surprised if this little mistake led to them pushing up their announcement at least a little bit. But oh man, we did it. That takes us through the most monumental bits of casting, at least in my opinion. I'm not saying that as an insult to Johnny and Ben either. It's just Reed and Sue had so many goddamn casting. The moment I'm sure at least some people have been waiting for. It is Johnny Storm time. Quick side note, I cannot wait for him in Marvel Rivals. Okay, anyway, moving on, just had to get that out there. As far as the super popular fan cast leading into MCU Human Torch, Zac Efron and Dacre Montgomery were literally everywhere. I don't think these names ever really popped up in any substantial rumors or leaks, but it seemed like most people really wanted them. The other super popular ones were Joe Keery and Rudy Pankow. I'm sure they would have been great. Joe Keery as Johnny always kind of spoke to me personally a little bit. Little did we know we had the wrong Stranger Things cast member. Anyway, onto the actual rumored castings. This one's kind of a big nothing burger, but I did mention Alexandra Daddario from that Dumoy post earlier, so it only feels right to include this too. In that same post, it said that Johnny Storm would be played by Matthew Daddario, her brother, and also apparently an actor. No offense, Matt Daddario. This never went anywhere. I actually didn't know of this one until doing all of my super important research for the video, but hey, if I'm including the Sue Storm bit, I gotta include that. Johnny really only had two super substantial rumors. Well, technically three, but one was just a complete misunderstanding, which rocks. Of these, Paul Mescal was the first. He was alongside Adam Driver and Margot Robbie in that Otherworld Fantastic Four lineup I keep mentioning. It was said he was offered the role. Worth noting, he has actually since denied all of this when doing press for Gladiator 2, funnily enough, alongside actual Johnny Storm, Joseph Quinn. Oh my god, and actual Reed, Pedro Pascal. I didn't even think of that. But I don't know how much we can really trust him here. I'm not saying he's lying, but I'm not saying he's telling the truth either. Of all these castings in this entire video, he's always going to feel like the one that got away to me. He's one of the most interesting actors working today. I feel like I've said that so many times. And he was just coming off an Oscar nomination. He would have been extraordinary as Johnny Storm. I will always stand by that. It also seemed like a ton of people were super excited about the possibility of him being Johnny Storm. Like, not even just Marvel people, but I'm talking like just film people in general, who a lot of the time aren't excited about big actors joining the MCU. It seemed like there was something different in the air with this one. Right before Joseph Quinn's name started being seriously thrown around alongside the rest of what we now know as a cast, Jack Quaid became the Human Torch for like literally only a couple hours there. Again, this would have been awesome, man. I love Jack Quaid, and he's like quickly becoming the superhero guy between voicing Superman and his role on The Boys. Hell, he was even Peter Parker. Anyway, this really did not last long at all, since he almost immediately came out and said he was never even approached for the role. In a real classy move, he actually tweeted this alongside a link to donate to the SAG-AFTRA strike, since that was during this time, knowing that tweet would blow up. Really cool move from, by all accounts, a really cool guy. Anyway, after Jack Quaid said that, insiders came out and said, that's so weird. I was told Johnny Storm was played by a guy with the initials JQ. Who else could that be? Everyone kind of thought about it for a few minutes, and then there was a resounding, oh. And that leads us up to the point Joseph Quinn was finally being thrown around. At this time, movies movies like Quiet Place Day 1 or Gladiator 2 didn't even have trailers, freaks that are way too caught up in movies like myself knew he was cast in those, but the general public really only knew him from Stranger Things. So people were rightfully confused here. To be fair, people are still pretty confused about this one, but I think in a post-Quiet Place and Gladiator world, perception has kind of shifted on Joseph Quinn. The man is obviously a really talented actor, and now that he's done more than just Eddie Munson, while not everyone's sold, I think everyone is at the very least ready to give him a chance, or I could be too optimistic here. Benjamin Grimm, the heart and soul of the Fantastic Four, a character that if done right can become the heart and soul of the MCU moving forward. I love The Thing, and out of all of these members, he kind of had the quietest casting process. Also, quick to mention, I'm really excited for The Thing in Marvel Rivals. Alright, back to the important stuff. Fan casts were fan casts, as always. Some of the big names included were John Cena, Seth Rogen, and The Rock. Yeah, fan casts weren't always the best during this time. I actually remember Zach Galifianakis being thrown out there too, which, I mean, hey. Anyway, there were two major names thrown around to credibly be The Thing, and one of them is one of the funniest moments as a major Marvel fan. It was April 28th, 2023. I remember this day so vividly. I just opened up Twitter and what? Truly, that can't be right. A tweet that simply read, they are looking at Jewish actors, both male and female, for The Thing in Fantastic Four. Mila Kunis is one of them. This all came after Mila Kunis had lunch with Matt Shakman, the director, which had already led to a ton of speculation, mostly about, you know, Sue Storm. Then all of a sudden, this idea that we were going to get a female Ben Grimm played by Mila Kunis, man, you really just had to be there. The entire Marvel community just kind of exploded within a matter of hours. At first, I kind of tried to gaslight myself into thinking this would be a okay casting, but man, I fear I was just so wrong. There was a lot of that going around too. A ton of people were just kind of acting like they were super down for this. I think because no one wanted to seem like a hater, but oh man, did I quickly become a hater. And then all of a sudden people were super hyped. You had tweets coming out of people saying Mila Kunis is the perfect casting for The Thing. I felt like I was being gaslit. I really don't hate the idea of gender-bent characters normally, depending on the character, obviously, but Ben Grimm is such a warm, masculine presence and such a great example of genuine positive masculinity. I thought it would be a real shame to lose that, and luckily we didn't. There was also a lot of theories around this time that maybe Mila Kunis wasn't playing Ben Grimm, but one of the female versions of The Thing, which there have been a couple, to be fair. A lot of people thought that maybe Mila Kunis was a character like Sharon Ventura, and they just weren't doing Ben Grimm at all, which I think would arguably be the worst case scenario for the big Fantastic Four movie. Luckily, we live in a world where that didn't happen. Anyway, outside of Mila Kunis, there was really only one major, super major casting rumor. This was around the team with Adam Driver, Margot Robbie, Paul Mescal, and Daveed Diggs as The Thing. He would have been pretty special. I think he could have done a fantastic job as Ben, and that completes the Fantastic Four that never was. And I must say, I think I prefer the cast we ended up getting overall. I'll have to wait until July to be really sure, but I think I am happier, especially Pedro Pascal and Ebon Moss-Backrack. Ebon especially, I think, could go down as one of the all-time great casting decisions. I know that's kind of crazy to say. It's just wild to think that if all of this is to be believed, and, you know, arguably it shouldn't be believed, all of these actors were offered the roles, and we ended up getting an entirely different team. Before I move on too much, there was another rumor about The Thing, but earlier than all of this, when She-Hulk first started airing, everyone got all riled up about The Thing appearing, which would have, you know, made sense, but would also be kind of an insane way to introduce him. An insider claimed he would pop up in She-Hulk, played by Jason Segel, who had apparently been cast. This one we can almost certainly say is 100% fake, but he definitely was a name thrown around quite a bit, whether by fans or insiders. All of that brings us to Ebon Moss-Backrack, one of my favorite actors. I truly think he will be an incredible Ben Grimm. There is no doubt in my mind. His name began being thrown around months before the official casting alongside the real cast. In general, it is kind of wild that the cast leaked like 6 months before it was ever officially announced, although eventually someone would have gotten it right just by guessing and pure process of elimination. The Fantastic Four cast we have now is really something special. I think it's a group of actors that no one really had originally outside of Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, and I think that makes it a lot more interesting that these aren't people that fans have wanted forever. I still like John Krasinski as Reed Richards, but if they did go with that, it's a little boring because we've all talked about it for so long, you know? I will kind of always mourn a couple of these choices. I would have really loved Paul Mescal as Johnny Storm, but hey, I really truly think this team we have is going to be really special. Just based on some like real life stuff we've seen between the team, it seems like they already are nailing that chemistry, and everything we've heard about this movie is just so reassuring. They're really nailing the family elements of the team, going back to the classic age of space exploration and retro futuristic vibes, and it's in a different universe. And then you have Ralph Ineson as Galactus, which is like some of the best casting I've ever heard. I'm getting way off topic now. Anyway, I would love to see a documentary made about the half-decade time period of getting the Fantastic Four together, planning out the movie, how many things changed along the way, all the potential castings, who they actually talked to, what of this is real, if anything. Hell, I'd even love to know what the plan was back when Kang was around. The Fantastic Four are said to be like major players in the MCU for at least the next decade, I'd say, and it has been a goddamn journey to get here. This is just the main Fantastic Four too, not to mention the Antonio Banderas as Galactus, Anya Taylor-Joy as Silver Surfer, which I do think that one was very real, and who could forget the infamous Howard Stern as Doctor Doom. That one was awesome, so clearly a prank, but man, did people believe it for some reason. Doctor Doom castings could actually be a whole different video, but at least they ended up with the right choice, right? They wouldn't just get the guy that played... Okay, we're not getting into that now. God. Anyway, that is the long, tumultuous, painful road to getting to where we are now with an actual Fantastic Four cast. If you weren't super tuned in during that time, you can't even begin to imagine how hard that Valentine's Day reveal hit. It was euphoric, not only because we had a cast, because we were done. Every day I am grateful I don't need to read a new rumor about blank being Sue Storm and the white boy of the month as Johnny Storm. It's made me more grateful for everything. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I'm sure I missed some stuff, so please let me know if you remember something I completely forgot. Also, just out of curiosity, are you happy with the team we have now, or would you have preferred the Adam Driver, Margot Robbie, Paul Mescal, Daveed Diggs team? Thank you again for watching. I truly appreciate it. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed. If not, hey, no worries. I appreciate you watching in the first place. I make content on a bunch of platforms. All those links will be below, as well as like Twitter and stuff. So yeah, check it out if you want. Thank you again. I really hope you enjoyed this and have a great rest of your day or night or whatever.